Hello and welcome on a very hot and sticky Sunday. 31 degrees outside, but hey, you know what? Um, as long as everyone is safe and happy, that's the main thing. My name is Tabrice, the best grassroots centre back in Vets football. That's a fact. And yeah, I want to again give a shout out to anyone that's subscribed, following, and again making comments. I have a very interesting interesting gentleman on this particular show. um he's a straight talker. He knows his football, and he has educated me in kind of certain business terms and in certain business ways that I didn't actually realize. And I want to hopefully share the knowledge that he's given me to you. So again, I want to give a big shout out to CEO of Booster and assistant
He'll have my guts for gutters. The
COO of a Booster and also assistant manager of Lewis FC Men's, Joe Vines. How you doing, sir?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Thanks very much for having me on.
Cool, good stuff. And you know, I want to kind of kick the conversation off straight away with again this kind of word, entrepreneur and intrapreneur. Could you tell us what the difference is, and literally how would you describe yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something I've sort of not coined the phrase, but it was something that's really, I was educated through a good friend of mine, a guy called Dean Forbes, who spent his career building businesses from the inside. Everybody knows about entrepreneurs. Everybody knows about, the smart people that spin a business out of nothing, bootstrap it. They pay their own way. They completely own the product or the service, and it's the holy grail of being a self-made man or self-made woman. The intrapreneur is somebody that works for a business that drives the same kind of innovation or change within that business, and really drives that forward. How you make your money. You can make good money being an employee. There seems to be this sort of anti-employee mentality where you've got to work for yourself. You've got to be the main man or the main woman. But actually working for other people, as long as it's the right business, and the entrepreneurial mentality is about getting a piece of that business, however small that might be, and growing it, through your own work, direction, and ensuring that the products and services that they deliver are market leading. So that's the key difference between an entrepreneur and an intrapreneur.
And because this is a football platform, I would want to try and connect it with especially like the vets side of the industry. How can someone use that kind of practical way of thinking and enhance their football club either at non-league level, amateur level?
Yeah,
I'd love to get your
I think that it's about there's a lot of it's a mentality, right? It's how you, if you're looking at things from like the alpha male perspective, and you've got to be in charge and you've got to be in control, and you're the person, all roads lead to you. Very, very quickly it becomes overwhelming. So you need good, lieutenants, amongst the group. So somebody that's willing to, potentially not be the number one, potentially not be that person that is seen from the outside looking in as the most important person in the room, but you can still drive that change and you can still influence, all the positive changes and innovations that mean that, my role at Lewis, for example, is as assistant manager. I work with Tony Russell, in my opinion, the best manager at the level, and probably beyond that as well, I must say. I don't have a problem being his assistant, I actually flourish in that role because it allows me to showcase the skills that I have up against the skills that he has. So there's a real danger of, do you have to be, the man? Do you have to be the number one or woman? But do you have to be the person that is seen as, they're in charge, when actually you can influence just as much change? You can develop players in the same way by being in the background or supporting. I think that the problem that a lot of people face is about ego. Is about look at me, like I'm the person, I'm the one. But actually, by just doing a good job, you can share in that success. I've seen a lot of success on the coaching side in recent years. It isn't about having your name plastered over the newspapers, which you won't get if you're not the manager. But your value. And also, if you're working with a very, very good manager, like I'm fortunate to, then they will give you the plaudits internally. And that's enough. That recognition from that aspect is more than enough to see you through. So it's a bit of a selfless role, and it should be, rather than, I'm not saying that all managers are egotistical, but from my perspective, it's not about that. It's not about me. It's about the team, which when you're in football, that's the key element, right? It's about the team.
And probably kind of digressing a little bit away from football. I mean, I kind of saw you on a kind of podcast, on a video podcast platform, and you kind of spoke very eloquently and very straight to the point without being overbearing, and exactly what you said before, not kind of leading with your ego, because there were two like other hosts on the show that also want to get their point across. Were you kind of conscious of the dynamic with the three of you, and also were you conscious of the person that you was having a conversation with, not to overpower each other?
Yeah, I mean, look, that podcast series was called The Ascenders. It was backed by the Forbes family group. As I said, Dean Forbes is a very good friend of mine, has been for a long time. And that was alongside Tim Campbell, who's famous for winning the very first Apprentice. He's on that at the moment. Very strong character, very smart, eloquent, articulate man. And Lynn May, and Lynn is she's very much out there. She's got quite diverse views at times. Very smart young lady, wonderful to work alongside. Really enjoyed that. My style is very much to fill the gaps, right? Not to talk for the sake of talking. And I think I don't necessarily believe that my style is great for TV, because I'm not arguing over people or talking over people in the way that Piers Morgan would. That particular series of podcasts was pulled together. Myself and Dean, create the concept for that, and the reason for it was to really inspire youngsters from backgrounds like myself and Dean, who come from difficult beginnings as such. We weren't on the breadline or anything, but certainly I wasn't. But it was more about coming from a backdrop of growing up in social housing, and that my parents are both working class, are working class, and had children and struggled in certain aspects, so we didn't have everything available to us, and the barriers to that are bigger. So when you come from a lower socioeconomic background, when you go to certain schools and you're speaking to people about careers, they give you options. The pinnacle for my age group was to work in a bank. If you really made it, you worked in the bank. And if you weren't quite at the level of academic understanding as those people that got those opportunities, you picked up a trade. So you worked as a tiler or a plumber or electrician, and they were the options that were available to you. So the choices that you had were very limited from an educational setting. What we tried to explain with that series of podcasts was that the world is huge and opportunities are massive. And the only barrier to that is your understanding and your knowledge, of those. So are you made aware of them? What are your choices? What are the fields that you could go into? And with my background in recruitment, I thought it was really, for me, it was an opportunity to give back and to position, a number of opportunities by showcasing stories of people that have come from similar backgrounds to myself and to Dean, and we're able to have huge success, whether that's, and particularly, again, as I mentioned, people from a lower socioeconomic background. It's not just about being a rapper or a footballer. It's about, opening people's eyes to the fact that they could work in software, or they could work in, in business, or a variety of other places. It's just opening those eyes and educating as many people as possible, that with a little bit of guidance and having the right representation, it could inspire you to go above and beyond what other people expect of you.
Mm. And why do you think entrepreneurship isn't spoken about as much as being an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I think that people see working for somebody else as a negative. It's like, you're filling somebody else's pockets. That is right. But if you can position it in a way that your skill set is such that, they see the value in you and what you're bringing and the multiples that you're adding to their business, then you should be in a position with education. And when I say education, it's not about GCSEs, it's about understanding of how a business works, where you can get a piece of it. And having skin in the game, whatever, however small that percentage might be, gives you an opportunity to grow your stake in that business. So if they do position that in the future and sell it, you know, what you get out of that is much more than your 9 to 5 wage. So, and I think that's something, again, that I only learned in the last few years, working for big corporations, taking your money, taking your bonuses, and seeing that, seeing that come through your own hard work. There comes a point where you recognize your own role in the success of that business. So sometimes smaller businesses, it's easier to get a piece of the pie. But if there is an opportunity for you to position yourself in such a way that they can't do without you, you should be able to negotiate without feeling bad about it, to say, well, is there an opportunity here for me to have shares in the business? Or, how does that, or if I can prove myself, rather than getting paid a bonus, can I be paid in a percentage? So I think that conversation and having that conversation is really important. The entrepreneurial side of things, it's attractive, right? Everybody likes the idea of being their own boss and, managing their own hours, and I could start when I want and finish when I want. Doesn't quite work out that way, right? Because you end up working longer hours, and if you've got employees, you need to make sure that they're looked after, and so there's stresses and strains that come with that as well. I think it's down to the individual, and you need to find what works for you, rather than being dictated by all of these Instagram accounts that say, oh, I've started you off, I've given you £100 and now go and start your own business. Like, what am I selling ice creams for a day? That is not reality. There will be some people that are very adept at understanding business from an early age and spinning money out of nothing, and I can't deny that. But for the majority of people, being an employee is not the end of the world, and you can earn good money, and you can get out of life what you want to get out of life, because success is more than just money, right? It's the happiness of it, the comfort, the flexibility. I think you need to find what works for you, rather than be led by what the outside world is telling you, trying to keep up with the Joneses.
Why do you think men over, let's say, 35, possibly even 40, struggle with, I'd say, key decisions in their careers?
I think it's education on the whole. And again, when I speak of education, it's about understanding. I read a lot. There's books like Rich Dad Poor Dad that educate you around the decisions that you make with your finances from a very young age. I was chasing fast money from a young age because I wanted things that my family couldn't afford to buy me, like trainers and things like that, right? So I wanted the latest trainers. I say, Mum, any chance I can get these? She said, no, absolutely not. So I've got a paper round, and then I've got a second paper round, and then I'm working in the corner shop, breaking boxes down, getting an extra £5 for that. And so, that's not entrepreneurial, right? You're working for your money, but when that money lands and you can buy your own trainers, you haven't got to worry about asking someone else for that. So I think it's about, when we talk about men of a certain age, I think that education around finances and managing your finances in a certain way that allows you to then live better later on in life, I think is really important. And I don't think enough is done in school to help children understand the value of saving, the value of investing, however which way you'd like to do that. I'm not talking about Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies that most people don't have an understanding of, but how can you get your money to work for you? And again, I'm not saying I've cracked it, because I really haven't. So, this isn't about me going, look at me, I'm great, I'm a multimillionaire. I'm not. But I wish that I'd had that level of understanding from a much younger age, that to really, when you look at the really wealthy, how they utilize money, how they utilize credit, and they make that work for them, is very different to people from a working class background like myself, where it comes in and it goes out just as quick.
Because again, please correct me if I'm wrong, because there's good debt and there's bad debt, but like to us, like debt is a debt, and you can work with a good debt if you have the right people around you, right?
Yeah, it's just about, again, I've got a financial advisor now, right, that will tell me the direction that I need to go in with certain aspects. But I think it really makes sense to try and educate yourself as much as possible. I wouldn't want to advise people, like, do this, do that. Everybody's circumstances are different, right? It's a hell of a lot easier to take risks with regards to investments when you've already got money. So, if you're Donald Trump and people talk about, oh, he lost all this money and now he's made multiple billions. Well, it comes from a family that had generational wealth. So if you're losing 100 million, but you still got 500 million, in your back pocket, it's different to if you're losing £100 and you only had £100. So look, like I said, I'm not here to educate people or to advise them about how they manage their own finances, but it really makes sense for them to self-educate and to ask as many questions as possible. And when you are seeking advice from people, seek advice from those that have money or using it in the right way, rather than your mate down the road who's telling you, no, what you want to do is you want to throw it into this. Yeah. I don't tend to listen to those people if I can help it, because the proof is in the pudding.
Yeah. And just kind of listening to your answer, I don't know if the pennies dropped for me. Do you think the average 35-year-old is financially and more, what's the word I'm looking for? They're like not as worldly and more secure as a 35-year-old back in the 1970s, if that makes sense?
No, I think it's a different world, right? I think that it's difficult right now because I think that the average house price, forget the number, was probably 3 times the average salary, whereas now the average house price is between sort of 7 and 8 times the average salary. So you can't sort of have a go at people for spending their money on a month by month basis and not having anything left over when you've got a mortgage and bills that are rising consistently high. It's not an easy way forward. I think we live in everybody is very good at spending money. So even if you're saying, I haven't really got any money, you're still finding money to spend on fast fashion or fast food or whatever else. You've got your Netflix subscription, you've got Sky TV, you've got this, that, and the other. When I talk about not having any money, I'd consider to be cancelling all my subscriptions, and your Spotify's gone and this one's. So people do find excuses to say, "Oh, I've really not got any money," when actually they have. It's about how they, their expenditure is going out on the wrong things. You can survive without these things, by the way, right? It's not something that if you don't have Spotify, you're not going to die. If you can't put food in the fridge, that might be a different problem entirely. There's not, is there an easy comparison between the 70s and now? I always think the 70s was 30 years ago, but it's a significantly larger time period now, right? We're talking 50 odd years ago. So it's a generation away. I don't think you can compare the two. But do I believe that most people, not just men, but people, are educated enough when it comes to their finances and how best to operate that, how to save properly? Again, I think it's a mentality. I think it's something that we need to try and drum into our children, so that when they get to a certain age where they're earning money, it's not alien to them. They're already thinking, right, 10% of whatever I earn goes in my savings.
So true.
Rather than just saying, right, I need this, I need that, and I'm going to go splurge in it.
Yeah. And I'm going to make a huge assumption here. I'm going to say that you're probably 30, 31. So like,
Assumption. I'm 42.
Oh, listen, great age.
Yeah, but I told you I had 2 of them. So
what was your biggest fear turning 30?
My life was very different at 30. So I had no children. I was a whole nother relationship away. And I was eager to start a family and things like that. And, it didn't work out. So for me, it probably wasn't 30 exactly, but 30, I think I was 31 when I thought, right, I'm 31, I'm on the scrap heap, right? Starting again. Career wise, I was in a good job, but it wasn't an unbelievable job. I was still playing football, and football's been a blessing and a curse for me in that, a lot of my, I'm obsessed with the game, right? I'm absolutely obsessed with the game. I played until I was 37. So my career, albeit worked alongside football, probably suffered with some of the decisions that I made, because I decided against certain jobs because it didn't allow me the flexibility to play football. I don't regret that, by the way, because I think you only get one opportunity to pursue a passion. And I wouldn't say that I love my job. Not that I do it because I love it, but I found a love for my work, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think it's important that you find the love for anything that you do. With football, it was that little bit easier. So yeah, I think for me at 30, 31, I was more concerned about, what direction was I taking from a personal perspective, rather than worrying too much about my professional career, because I'd always earned good enough money because I was in a sales environment, and there was an opportunity for me to earn commission, which meant that I was master of my own destiny. So as long as I worked hard and I did the right things, the money would follow.
And I'd like to kind of talk about your footballing journey. Of course, like we are kind of at the present, stage now, but can you kind of take us back to probably where you felt, hang on, I could actually make a decent living from like playing football, and also as well now being assistant manager at Lewis FC. What's like probably the most important characteristic of being, an assistant manager and being part of the management team?
Yeah. Football wise, as strange as it is, I never wanted to be a footballer. I wasn't, a star footballer as a kid. I was never at a pro club. I didn't play for the district. My brother was a much better junior footballer than I was. When I was 17, I got contact lenses because I used to wear glasses, obviously. and my game really improved, strangely enough. I could see things, I could see the ball, I could see who I was tackling. And there was a lot of interest when I was young, 17, 18, 19, from professional clubs. So there was a lot of clubs sniffing, but nothing ever materialized. But because I never had that academy career where I was released, I never had a bitterness about the game. So I had a lot of friends that were in the pro ranks and didn't make it. And when they come out, they not had a chip on their shoulder, but they were really bitter about, oh, I didn't make it. And they felt, oh, done by. I just love to play the game. And I started at 17 playing men's football. And because I started at a level that was manageable for me, I played, by the time I was 19, I played a lot of games, probably, 80, 90 games, where, you think the average kid in an academy, they only play 15 games a season.
Mm-hmm.
And the football was a bit tippy-tappy. It certainly wasn't, competitive in the way that men's football was. So I think I signed for Cray Wanderers when I was about 19, and my first envelope that I ever received had about 30 quid in it, and I was buzzing. And it really, by the time I was 20, 21, I was playing for Bromley, and then I sort of, I'd worked my way very quickly up the ladder. So I started in South London football, and I ended, by the time I was 22, I was playing in the Conference South for Lewis. At that time under a really good manager, Steve King. And, we were in the very first season the Conference South was created. We got promoted, we got a double promotion. And, in that group of players, who are lifelong friends of mine now, were people like that you might be familiar with, people like Francis Duku.
Okay.
He's like South London royalty when it comes to non-league football. Junior Caddy was in that side. So these are, my real close friends from that day onwards. And, the experience itself. But it wasn't about the money. The money was good. And it was nice to get paid weekly. But as quick as that came in, I passed it over to a barmaid. Jay, I'm just on the call, yeah? Sorry.
No
Time
problem.
everything, right? Yeah. They're saying good night to me.
God bless.
But like I say, as quick as it came in, it was passed over to a barmaid in the West End on a Saturday night. But the wages that I got from football was enough to cover my mortgage money. So it was a significant, it wasn't silly money, but it was, it was a lot better than I was used to when I first started getting 30 quid in an envelope.
And now as an assistant manager at Lewis, and you're part of the management structure, what's the kind of, I'd say, the most important characteristic that an assistant manager needs to have in a kind of professional club?
Yeah, I think in my role with Lewis and working with Tony, it's really important that I fill the gaps. So understanding who you're working with, where their strengths are and where their weaknesses are potentially, and slotting in a way that is not abrasive to what they're doing. Because Tony and I were very, very good friends, right? He's an unbelievable guy, but we don't always agree.
Mm-hmm.
But we have our disagreements in the car. And,
I love that.
Yeah, it's like being parents, right? Because if someone said, if one of your kids said, "Oh, Dad, can I have a yogurt?" and you say no, and then they go, "Mum, can I have a yogurt?" and she says yes, it's a problem, right? And then they recognize that, okay, I'll go to Mum, and Mum will give me what I want. So you need to have that joint front, and you need to be able to fill the gaps, like I said earlier on, where I do a lot of what I call drive-bys. So whispering in ears and understanding, right, so-and-so looks a bit like they've got a problem today. What is it? How's it all going? You all right? What's happening at home? I've had a bit of trouble with my missus, or, I've got work's getting a little bit on top, or my baby's not sleeping. And then I can feed that back to the manager. So whereas the manager's he's looking at the tactical stuff. He's looking at, right, it's 11v11 today. I want that to happen. I want this to happen. There's not enough time. We don't have enough time in semi-professional football to cater to all of that. So I'm a very methodical thinker. I've introduced certain processes. I introduced the video analysis to Tony when I first joined, and we've really adopted that. We now use GPS vests. We now use a well-being. We've got like a script that every day when they come in, we talk to them about how they're feeling, certain aspects, so we can capture how they feel on a every time they're in with us, and it allows us to monitor if there's a dip in their scores. Then it sort of triggers a conversation, things like that. So it's the small detail. I call it the 1%, that continuous improvement. And again, it's very similar to what I do at work with the CEO, and I fill the gaps that he leaves, and vice versa. So working in tandem and working in a team, as a backroom staff, we all know what our strengths are, and we try to make sure that we utilize all of those and fill any gaps that the others have.
I would love to get your opinion about mental well-being in like semi-professional football. Is it something that's spoken about freely? Are there kind of other clubs that that literally are huge advocates of like mental well-being?
I think it's something that's becoming more, spoken about more often now. I can't really talk about other clubs. I don't really go into other clubs. Certainly in the professional environment, player welfare officers and things like that are becoming more commonplace. How developed and mature those are, I really don't know. I was talking to a good friend of mine on Friday, a guy called Kevin George. He's wrote a book called Psychology. He's got another book coming out soon. I would plug it, but I don't know what it's called. And he's very much in that psychology space. And we spoke often about, my character as a player. I was somebody that was well liked from a management perspective because I was your typical run through brick walls. He gets in people's faces. He's good for the group. He's loud. He's charismatic, etc., etc. But I was also prone to violence. I was also prone to disciplinary issues. Could fly off the handle quickly, and that's a product of my upbringing and where I'm from, and how you operate on an estate, and how you meet aggression with aggression. And if you back down from that, that means that you've got a weakness, and that's something that's very common for people going into a professional environment. When the coaches shout and then the kids sort of go like, "Who are you talking to?" in a sort of in a way of bouncing that back, they're seen as having a bad attitude, or being a bad egg. And actually that's a psychological way for them to manage the situation that they're in. So and talking about you represent the club. The mindset is wrong, because you don't represent the club. You're not a representation of the club. You're a representation of yourself. And that's how you should see yourself. What you project is you. So being more understanding of that will help you to be more self-aware, and would help you to manage that more effectively. Well-being, it covers a huge umbrella. You could be talking about people that have got neurodiverse, have got challenges that stem from being neurodiverse, right? ADHD, for example. I see a lot of people going, "Oh, everyone's got ADHD these days," and blah, blah, blah. And well, no, it's just becoming diagnosed more. There was a lot of people with ADHD when I was a kid, but it wasn't diagnosed, which meant those children or those people didn't have any help to manage that. So they were often seen as the bad kids or the disruptive kids. So well-being, for a lot of kids that are in the football environment, that are being drummed into him, "You're going to be a footballer, you're going to be a footballer, you're going to be a footballer." And then they get right down to the last, year, and then they get discarded because they're no longer of use to the football club. And they wonder why so many of those boys and girls come out of the game and don't play a game full stop, or have challenges, mental challenges, depression and things like that. Also, because the pressure that comes with it, right, it is worse than, and how that's handled is worse than you can imagine. And again, I do recognise that going into full-time employment in any other job brings a certain amount of pressure, but there isn't the same level of blowing smoke up their ass, and there isn't the same level of money. So they're given huge, look at Chelsea as the model. There are professional, there are kids there that have never played a first team game, that are driving around in, Bentleys and things like that, thinking they're going to be a footballer for Chelsea Football Club, and it never materialises. So the crash landing back down to earth is much bigger than it would be if you're working in a professional environment elsewhere on 25 grand a year and someone says, look, I don't think this is for you. You can go and get a job somewhere else on very similar money and make a good career out of that. If you're a footballer on 3, 4, 5 grand a week at 17, 18, and you don't crack it off, and then you're a postman tomorrow, there's a world of difference there.
I would love to know where you had to change your kind of philosophy in terms of how you played football, because you said that you was very aggressive, you was literally in your face, you was almost like the joker of the pack. There must have been a time where he's like, hang on, you know what, I have to change how I play, and literally the energy that I was giving off.
Not really. Not really. It still kicks in, right? That competitive nature still kicks in. But I think as I got older, when I got into my 30s, my sort of from 32 to 37, the body changed. So that dynamism, that sort of all action play that I used to be, had to change a little bit. I had to sort of subdue that a little, but there was still the aggression and the competitive nature, combative nature. But I mean, people that have played against me will go, oh, he's horrible. People that played with me would tell a different story. And I actually, I had a boy that I played with, and he went, I always thought you were an horrible bastard. But actually, when I played with you, he said, you're a nice guy. So there's getting that balance of, when I'm out there, when I cross the white line, I used to want to win. And it wasn't at all costs, but pretty close to it. And I like to play on the edge. I played better when I was bubbling under the surface, because if I was just relaxed and it got very lackadaisical, it showed in my game, my quality went. Whereas if I was constantly on it, not only did it drive me, but I'd like to think that it drove my teammates as well. I went into my old coach, Danny Carroll. He's at Bournemouth. He does the under-18s at Bournemouth. And I went in to watch a session, and I was talking to him about the differences between non-league football and professional football. And he said, like, I planned a session one day, and, one of the players came to me and said, right, what are we doing today? And I said, we're doing this for the first bit, then this, then that. And he said to me, no, I don't want to do that, mate. I just want to play five-a-side. I've been at work all day. I just want to play five-a-side. And I said to him, who was that? And he said, you. That says anything. But yeah, and also I operated under some really good managers during my time, and I would say the best that I operated under was George Wakelin and Billy Smith. Absolute, when you talk about legends, is a word that gets thrown around very lightly, but very, very good old school football managers. But they knew how to manage me and to push my buttons to get the best out of me. So yeah, I was very grateful for working under some very good managers.
Why do you think the elite athletes in, let's say, in the Premiership and across the world and Europe that are reaching 35, not really 35, but 30 onwards, are getting better pay deals and are performing better than they were in their teens and 20s?
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to correlate their pay deals with their performances. I think when you look at the likes of Messi and Ronaldo, for example, and you go back, we spoke about the 70s, right? And you look at the professional footballers of the 70s, there's a lot more education and understanding of nutrition. I think personally, the game changer was the influx of foreign managers into the Premier League with your Arsene Wenger's and people like that, because they changed the culture of football, and not just in the Premier League but globally. And the Italian league was slightly ahead of us, which was why that was the best league at the time in in my opinion, in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. Because how they lived, they hardly drunk. They might have a glass of wine with their meal. The food that they were eating was better for their bodies. They had a better understanding of conditioning and stretching and looking after their body, which allowed them to play for longer, and at a higher level of performance for longer. When you look at the modern day footballer, they are not just elite footballers, they are elite athletes. So they run quicker for longer. Somebody like Ronaldo, he's self-made. What he does, how he lives, doesn't, the clip that always stands out for me was when they gave him a Coca-Cola and he said, no, agua.
Yeah.
That is how these guys live every day, not just when you see them on the camera, but behind the camera. So I think the performances and their ability to maintain that standard for longer periods, for over a period of years, is because of that. I think when you have generational talents like Ronaldo, like Messi, like Neymar, the reason that they are getting these big money deals is because of their brand. They bring something bigger than just football. It's everything that goes with it. If you went into the Amazon rainforest and pulled out a picture of Leo Messi, the indigenous tribesmen would go, Messi. It's that level of infamy or fame, celebrity. You can't get away from it, and that's where the big money comes in.
Have you seen an emergence of men over 35 playing vets football? And what's your opinion about the scene of like vets or masters football?
Yeah, I mean, look, my mate's out there having a glass of wine with my wife and his wife. He's a guy called Scott Kinch, who played non-league football for many years, very good player, and has still been playing vets football for the last 3 or 4 years. I've seen the emergence of it. I think it's really interesting. I've played briefly, for a couple of sides, just, the odd game here and there, via friends. I've not really got into the hype of it as such, in the same way that I've not really got into the hype of, I know a lot of the boys at SE Dons, for example, and, Beatty's squad and all those, the movement that they've created in Sunday football, off the back of YouTube channels and things like that. I haven't got a problem with it. My focus is on Saturday football, non-league Saturday football. The vet scene seems to be flourishing right now. I know there's a lot of good sides. I've been getting tapped up. I was getting tapped up on Friday from Caleb, a friend of mine, Caleb.
Oh, LSU.
Yeah, he said, I've been trying to get you for a long time. Yeah, I can't do Saturdays because I'm still involved in the game, right? I've never really gone away from Saturday football. I think it's great. I don't have a problem with it. When I look at teams like the Charcoal, I'm familiar with a lot of those boys, having played with or against them over the years, and it seems to be a really interesting scene. I think that fair play to those lads that are still going, because I've been in the garden earlier on and I think I've pulled my hamstring.
But yeah, I mean, the scene is growing, and you've mentioned SE Dons, Beatties, of course, Rising Ballers, and hashtag and whatnot. I think for like me, I'm literally waiting for that vets team to literally take it into that age group and that generation, because I still think, I'm 42 as well, so I think we are young enough to embrace social media, but also I also believe that we're like wise enough to actually kind of know the difference when things, it's banter and when you've got to speak to someone face to face.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not anti-social media. I'm not anti. I work in the technology space, right? So I need to have an understanding of it. Um, I struggle to always have my camera out. Take photographs of my dinner. Or else that I'm doing all the reels and stuff like that. So it's more a case, for me, of getting that right balance. Those guys do it really well. Like I say, SE Dons, I think, are great. I know a lot of those guys, and how they manage that, and they've got cameramen and camera women, going around, filming it, and editing the footage and such. So it's an operation, it's a business. What they do, they make money from it. So that's great. I never grew up wanting to be a YouTuber like my children. What do you want to do when you grow up? I want to be a YouTuber, Dad. So I see the appeal of it. I just think maybe I'm a little bit too long in the tooth.
And as men over 30, what do you think men should be prioritizing their time before the age of 50 or even 60?
I think it seems obvious, right? But I think first and foremost is your health. And you see people, I'm sure you've had him on, Damien Scannell.
Yeah.
Scans is doing great things, right, for a lot of people, because particularly if you've been really sporty and you've been pursuing, I've played in football for 20 or 25 years or whatnot, and my fitness was a byproduct of me wanting to be good at football and be able to compete. It wasn't about looking in the mirror and seeing a six pack. So having the drive to get up, go to the gym or go on a run was driven by my need to be good at football. As soon as that stopped, I didn't go to the gym. I didn't push myself to go out for a run. I just sort of thought, I'm not playing anymore, so what's the point? So finding a love for your fitness and your health, I think, will really make a big difference. Even just stretching, doing things like yoga, throughout my career, I stretched all the time. I played at 20, I played for Bromley, and I played with a guy called Eddie Akamoa, who is, one of the best people you could ever meet in your life. He's from Battersea. He's a great guy. He's a legend in non-league. He played for Kingstonian, like really, really good footballer. And I fell in love with him in a way that everything he did, I did. He really influenced me in a positive fashion. And he was always stretching. And I said, Ed, why do you always stretch? He said, because then I don't pull muscles and I'm always flexible and dynamic and I can be quick off the mark. He said, well, if you're at work, stretch. If you're in the bath, stretch. If you're sitting watching TV, stretch. And I always took that on. And it was something that I did throughout my whole career. So having that sort of that fitness and that flexibility, I think, is really important. I mean, in terms of, what else should you be focusing on? Those are really important money-making years, in my opinion, 30 to 50, because in most cases, you've done your apprenticeship, you've learned your trade, whatever that might be, and there's an opportunity for you to earn in the higher echelons of whatever that trade is. And for me, it's about cashing in, not taking liabilities with that or liberties with that, but, knowing your worth. Because even though something might take you 10 minutes to do, the reason it's taken you 10 minutes is because you've had 20 years of experience doing it. So knowing your price for your time and your worth for your time, I think, is something that everybody of a certain age should have a good understanding of. I mean, my wife's already asked me what I'm getting paid for this podcast. So
but I love that. But you know what? It's so true. It's about knowing your worth, and again, I think that's kind of something that a lot of people, and even myself as well. It's like, okay, you know what? I've been kind of doing a certain skill, and I'm kind of at a level of my knowledge where I know I should be, I should be paid more. But again, it's probably being in those circles, being like within those like networks to literally open up your mind to those opportunities, right?
I think it's sad, right, that I have these conversations a lot, particularly with women, right? And I really encourage the women that I work that work for me or work alongside me to be comfortable asking for more money when the time, if they feel that they deserve it, they should ask for it. The worst thing that can happen in that situation is that the answer is no. Sorry, I've got kids going to bed now. So yeah, the worst thing that they can say is no, but they should be comfortable coming forward to say, look, I've done this, I've achieved that, I've delivered that, and actually I feel like I should get more money. And that's a conversation that I encourage all of my staff to do. Being comfortable negotiating and asking for what you deserve, because what happens is you're stewing on it. I should be getting paid more. This is ridiculous. All the work that I'm doing, I've delivered that, and then you resent it, and then you're looking for a way out. When actually one conversation to say, look, I think I deserve a bit more, or actually let me do a presentation to show me the work, to show you the work that I've done and what I've delivered, and off the back of it, if they don't give you that increase in your pay that you deserve, then fine, then go and look elsewhere to get it elsewhere if you think you deserve it. But I think you have to be able to push yourself. Otherwise, you just go through life regretting what you've never done.
Yeah, so true, so true. And Joe, honestly, thank you so much for like coming on. And again, I just want to say we've had one conversation which probably lasted about an hour and a half, and when I watched you on Ascendance, it wasn't even just the questions that you was asking; it was just how you was listening and actually responding to everyone's comments, and also letting everyone speak as well, which is an amazing skill that people just don't really kind of see. But I kind of saw with like everything that you said and your body language, it was kind of absolutely amazing. And I hope that we can probably speak a lot more. And
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, listen, if you got, like I said, I'd let you know what the price is, but we can do it. Yeah, as long as my missus is happy with the date.
No, brilliant. Joe, thank you so much for like coming on. And again, anyone out there, please like, subscribe, share, and we will be back next week, Sunday, live as always, 8 until 9. Have an amazing day.